It's a fascinating situation in Canada right now.
Yeah.
So many smaller communities are really feeling the pinch when it comes to finding skilled workers.
Hmm.
And at the same time, you've got talented people all over the world looking for exactly the kind of opportunities these places offer.
Hmm.
That's the sweet spot we're diving into today.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is seeing how these specific sort of targeted programs are designed to connect those needs and opportunities. We're going to unpack one of the more interesting ones.
Exactly. We are taking a deep dive into the Rural Community Immigration Pilot, or RCIP, and we're focusing specifically on how it's actually working in the North Okanagan-Shuswap region of British Columbia.
Right.
We've got a really detailed report on the ground level implementation of this RCIP there, plus official info from government and local websites, and, a good sense of what daily life is actually like in that part of BC.
So if you've ever maybe thought about making a move to a smaller Canadian town, or perhaps you're an employer in one of those areas looking for talent, well, this deep dive is definitely for you. Our goal is really just to give you a clear, insightful understanding of this particular immigration pathway.
Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is pretty simple.
Hmm.
Unpack the RCIP in the North Okanagan-Shuswap. We want to get a handle on how it operates, who might be eligible to apply, and what it's truly like to live and work there.
Okay.
Okay, so let's unpack this. What exactly is the RCIP as it exists, in the North Okanagan-Shuswap?
Right. Officially, it's the Rural Community Immigration Pilot. It's a federal initiative that launched back in January 2025.
Okay.
You can sort of think of it as the next chapter after the old Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot, the RNIP. That one stopped taking new applications in August 2024.
Okay, I remember RNIP. Vernon was part of that, wasn't
It
it?
was, yeah. Vernon was in the RNIP, and then the Shuswap region kind of came on board later. Now this whole area operates under the new RCIP framework.
So it's a kind of updated approach then.
Totally.
Got it. And who's actually running things on the ground in the North Okanagan-Shuswap?
Well, this is where that community-driven aspect really comes through. In this region, the RCIP is a joint effort. It's led by two local economic development organizations, Community Futures North Okanagan and Community Futures Shuswap.
Ah, Community Futures. Okay.
Yeah, they've partnered up with the federal government. It's a 3-year agreement. They have to manage the pilot,
All right.
which kicked off in February 2025.
Community-driven. Okay, so that sounds like the local groups have pretty significant input into how the program actually functions.
Oh, absolutely. They're the ones working directly with the federal government, sure, but they also have that really crucial role of designating which local employers can even participate.
Right.
And they assess the potential immigrant candidates based on the specific needs of their communities. And then ultimately, they provide that essential community recommendation. That's
Yeah.
what you need for the permanent residence application. Yeah, this local investment is really there to try and make sure the program truly benefits the region itself.
That's a pretty significant responsibility. Now, geographically, when we talk about the North Okanagan-Shuswap for this RCIP, what specific areas are we actually talking about?
Okay, so the boundaries are quite precisely laid out. It covers the entire regional district of the North Okanagan, the RDNO.
Mm.
Then it also includes specific electoral areas, that's C, D, E, F, and G, within the Columbia-Shuswap Regional District, the CSRD, plus the city of Salmon Arm is included too.
Okay, so places like Armstrong, Enderby,
Mhm.
Salmon Arm, Vernon, those kinds of communities.
Exactly, those are some of the key ones, yeah. This kind of focused approach helps make sure that the benefits of the program are really concentrated in these smaller, more rural communities.
Makes sense.
And, looking at the bigger picture, it's probably worth noting that the federal government seems to see this model, this rural immigration model, as something that could potentially become permanent down the road. They're building on what they learned from RNIP.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got a good overview of the program itself. Now, if someone listening is thinking, could this be an option for me? Horrible. What are the key eligibility criteria they really need to know about?
Right, so there are really two sets of requirements you need to meet. You've got the foundational federal criteria that's from IRCC, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada.
Okay.
And then you have the specific criteria that Community Futures has established just for the North Okanagan-Shuswap region.
Got it. Let's start with the federal side. What are the baseline rules from Ottawa?
Okay. The first thing, and maybe the most crucial element, is getting a qualifying job offer.
Right.
Now, this isn't just any job offer. It has to be a genuine offer for full-time work, and that means at least 30 hours per week.
Full-time? Okay.
It also has to be non-seasonal, and it needs to be permanent. So no temporary gigs.
Permanent, non-seasonal, full-time, check.
And the offer must come from an employer who has been officially designated under the RCIP, and their business has to be located within those specific North Okanagan-Shuswap boundaries we just talked about.
So not just any employer in the area.
Nope, designated ones only. And importantly, the wage they're offering has to meet or even exceed the minimum wage listed on the Government of Canada's job bank for that specific occupation.
Ah, the job bank minimum. That's important.
Yeah, it's done to protect you, you know? Make sure employers aren't undercutting prevailing wages by hiring through the RCIP.
Good point.
Also, just be aware, certain types of job offers don't qualify, like offers from consulates, usually from staffing agencies, or from a business where you, the applicant, have a controlling stake. Those are generally out.
Right, okay. So a solid, legitimate job offer is step one. What else does the federal government look for?
Okay, next up is usually work experience. You typically need to show you've got at least 1 year of paid work experience in the last 3 years.
1 year in the last 3.
Yeah, and that adds up to 1,560 hours total. It could be full-time or the equivalent amount in part-time work. It can be with different employers, either here in Canada or abroad, just as long as it was obtained legally.
Okay.
But self-employment and any unpaid work like volunteering or internships don't count towards this.
Paid work only. Got it.
And this work experience also needs to be related to the tier category of the job offer. Tier that's training, education, experience, and responsibilities. It's how the government categorizes jobs based on skill level.
Right, the tier system.
Exactly. So there are specific rules about how your past experience aligns. For instance, if the job offer is in tiers 0, 1, or 1, those are higher skilled management and professional jobs, your experience needs to be in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3.
Ah, okay.
The rules vary slightly depending on the tier level of the job offer, but the basic idea is to ensure your past work gives you a relevant foundation for the new role.
Makes sense. They want to see you can actually do the job based on past experience. But I heard there might be an exception for some recent grads.
Yes, that's right. There's a pretty significant exemption for international students who've recently graduated.
Oh. Tell me more.
Okay, so if you graduated from a publicly funded post-secondary institution within the North Okanagan-Shuswap region,
Local grads, okay.
and you meet certain criteria, like your program was generally at least 2 academic years long, or maybe an eligible master's or PhD, and you were a full-time student, got your credential, and were physically in the community for most of your studies, then that work experience requirement might be waived.
Oh, wow. That's huge for students.
It can be. But there are a few conditions, you know, like if more than half your studies were English or French as a second language or distance learning, or if you had a scholarship that requires you to go back home after graduation, then you might not qualify for this exemption.
Okay, so some specific rules there, but potentially a big help for local international grads. What about language skills? That always comes up with Canadian immigration.
Always, absolutely. You'll need to take an approved language test. IELTS or CELPIP are the common ones for English. And you need to achieve the minimum Canadian language benchmark, or CLB level, that matches the tier category of your job offer.
CLB levels.
Yeah, they show your proficiency in listening, speaking, reading, writing. Higher numbers mean more fluency. So for those higher skilled tier 0 and 1 jobs, the minimum is CLB 6.
Okay.
For tier 2 and 3, it's CLB 5. And for tier 4 and 5 jobs, it's CLB 4.
Got it. Tied to the job's skill level.
Exactly. And your test results need to be less than 2 years old when you apply. Keep that in mind.
Good tip. Less than 2 years old. What about education?
Okay, education. You need to have either finished a Canadian high school diploma,
Or
if your highest education was outside Canada, you'll need an ECA. That's an Educational Credential Assessment Report.
ECA, right? I've heard those.
Yeah, you get it from an organization designated by the Canadian government. It basically verifies that your foreign credential is equivalent to, say, a Canadian high school diploma or maybe a post-secondary degree or diploma.
So it proves your education stacks up.
Pretty much. And that ECA report also needs to be less than 5 years old when you apply.
Okay. 5 years for the ECA. What about having enough money? Settlement funds.
Right, settlement funds. You need to show you have enough money that's readily available and not tied up in loans or anything unencumbered funds to support yourself and any family members coming with you.
How much are we talking?
Well, the exact amount depends on your family size, and IRCC updates it yearly. Just as an example, in early 2025, it was around $7,963 for one person. For a family of 7, it was about $20,884 plus extra for each additional member.
Okay, so a decent chunk of change needed up front.
Usually, yes, but this requirement can be waived if you're already legally working in Canada when you apply.
Okay. That makes sense if you're already earning an income here.
Exactly. It's basically to assure the community and the government you'll have a bit of a financial cushion while you're getting settled, especially before you maybe start earning a full income.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Anything else on the federal checklist?
A couple more key things. You need to show a genuine intention to actually live within the North Okanagan-Shuswap region.
Right. It's not just a pathway to PR anywhere in Canada.
No, exactly. It's about committing to settling in that specific community that endorses you. You also, of course, need to get that formal community recommendation from Community Futures North Okanagan-Shuswap, which we talked about earlier. That's a must.
The golden ticket, kind of?
Sort of, yeah. And finally, if you're applying for permanent residence from within Canada, you absolutely must maintain valid temporary resident status like a visitor visa, study permit, or work permit throughout the entire application process. Don't let it lapse.
Crucial point. Okay, that's a pretty comprehensive list of federal requirements. Now, what about the community? What extra criteria or specific hurdles does the North Okanagan-Shuswap itself add to the mix?
Right, this is where you see the community's unique labor needs and priorities really shaping the program. First off, the job offer you get. It has to be in one of 5 priority sectors that the community has specifically identified as facing labor shortages.
5 priority sectors. Which ones are they?
Okay, they are health, education, law and social, community and government services, sales and service, trades and transport, and manufacturing and utilities.
Okay. Broad categories, but specific.
Yeah, and within those broad sectors, there's also a more detailed list of 25 specific NOC codes, National Occupational Classification codes, that are particularly targeted.
25 specific jobs they really want.
Basically, yeah. And these priorities, they get reviewed annually by the communities, so they can adjust them based on what's needed. If you've got experience in healthcare or the trades, for example, this program seems particularly relevant right now.
Okay, so the job has to be in a needed sector, and ideally one of those 25 NOCs. What's next on the local list?
Then there's a community-specific wage requirement.
More than just the federal minimum.
Yes. The hourly wage offered to you must meet or exceed a minimum threshold that the community has set for that particular priority NOC code.
Okay, what kind of wage are we talking about locally?
As of early 2025, the minimum was generally $22 per hour for most of those priority NOCs.
$22 an hour.
But it was higher, $25 per hour for certain management roles, like in food service and accommodation, and for executive housekeepers.
Okay, so $22 or $25 depending on the job.
Right. And it's probably worth noting that job offers with wages above these minimums might, be looked upon more favorably when the community assesses your application, might give you an edge.
Good to know. So a local minimum wage floor. Anything else specific to the community's criteria?
Yep, there's a community point system.
A point system, like express entry.
Similar concept, but specific to this community program. Applicants need to get a minimum score of 50 points based on this system.
Okay, 50 points minimum. What gets you points?
Well, the exact details of how points are awarded weren't fully available in the info we reviewed, things like the specific wage level, any connections you already have to the community or skills, but the fact there's a minimum score tells you something.
What does it tell you?
It tells you the community isn't just looking for someone to fill a job. They're looking for candidates they believe have a higher chance of successfully settling in, staying long-term, and really contributing to the local area.
So it's about fit and retention, too.
Exactly. While the specifics aren't here, you can probably expect the system to prioritize candidates who not only have the skills, but also show that genuine interest in becoming part of the community.
Makes sense. So prospective applicants should definitely check the official website for details on that point system if it's published.
Absolutely. Check the official RCIP North Okanagan-Shuswap website for the most current info on the points system. And finally, just as part of the process, applicants need to comply with any request from Community Futures for more info or documents. Meeting both the federal and these community-specific requirements is essential for this program.
Okay, so it's definitely not just about the individual applying. We've touched on employers, but they play a really significant role here, right? They need to become designated. What does that involve?
That's absolutely right. Employers are totally central to the RCIP because it's all driven by those genuine job offers. To even hire someone through this pilot, employers have to meet certain criteria and go through a formal process to get officially designated by Community Futures.
Okay, what criteria do employers need to meet? Maybe start with what the federal government kind of expects, even implicitly.
Sure. While the feds mostly focus on the candidate's eligibility for PR, the fact that you need a genuine job offer implies a few things about the employer.
Like what?
Well, they need to be actively running a legitimate business, obviously. They have to have a real need to fill the position they're offering, and they need to show they can actually fulfill the terms of the offer, paying the wage, providing proper working conditions, all that.
Standard stuff for a real job.
Pretty much. And they need a clean history of complying with all the relevant federal and provincial employment laws. Plus, as we mentioned, certain employers are just not eligible consulates, usually staffing agencies, and employers with a bad compliance record.
Okay, so legitimate businesses with a real need and a good track record. What about the specific requirements from the North Okanagan-Shuswap community itself?
Right. The community adds its own layer to make sure the program really benefits the local economy and that the employers are invested. First, the business has to be physically located within those defined RCIP boundaries.
Makes sense. Local jobs for a local program.
Yep. They also need to have been actively operating under the same management for at least 2 years within the community.
2 years of operation. Okay.
And the business must be operating in one of those 5 priority sectors we talked about earlier.
Health, trades, etc. Got it.
Plus, at least 75% of the work for the job being offered has to be performed within those community boundaries.
Okay, so not remote work based elsewhere.
Generally, no.
Right.
And of course, the job itself has to be full-time, non-seasonal, and permanent, just like the federal requirement. Employers also have to meet that specific community minimum wage for the job's NOC code.
The $22 or $25 an hour?
Right. They also have to complete mandatory online training from IRCC about the program rules and their responsibilities. Proof needed.
Employer training, okay.
They need to be in good standing with all the laws, federal, provincial, municipal, and they have to commit to cooperating with Community Futures, providing info when asked.
This is reasonable.
And finally, they're generally expected to show they're committed to helping the newcomer settle in successfully. Often that means connecting them with local settlement services.
So it's about making sure employers are stable in key sectors and genuinely committed to the community and their new hires. What's the actual process for an employer to get designated?
Okay, first step. The employer must complete those mandatory online training modules from IRCC. They cover all the program rules and employer responsibilities.
Get the training done first.
Yep, and they'll need proof, like a certificate for their application. Community Futures might also hold local info sessions to help them out.
Okay. Training done, then when?
Then the employer submits a formal application to Community Futures North Okanagan-Shuswap asking to be designated. This application will need details about their business and confirmation they meet all the criteria.
When did this open up?
In this region, the application process for employers opened May 1st, 2025.
Okay. Fairly recent then.
Yeah. Community Futures then reviews each application carefully against all the rules. If everything checks out and the employer qualifies, they get a formal confirmation of designation.
And then they're official.
Pretty much. They'll usually also get listed on the community's RCIP website as a designated employer. And this designation is generally a one-time thing for the pilot's duration, unless, they mess up and get it revoked.
Okay, so once an employer is designated, what are their ongoing responsibilities in this program?
Right. Getting designated is just the start. They have several important ongoing responsibilities. First, they need to actively recruit suitable foreign nationals, people whose skills and experience match one of those priority NOC codes and who meet all the eligibility rules themselves.
So find the right person who qualifies.
Exactly. Then, when they find someone, they need to provide that genuine job offer that meets all the RCIP rules.
Okay.
Now, crucially, the designated employer is the one responsible for putting together and submitting the application package for the community recommendation to Community Futures. This is done on behalf of the person they want to hire.
So the candidate doesn't submit that part?
No, the employer does. And that package has to show the job offer is real, it fits the priorities, meets the wage rules, and that the candidate themselves is eligible, including getting those 50 points on the community system.
Wow, the employer handles a lot of that initial paperwork.
They do. The specific documents needed are set by Community Futures, so employers really need to check the RCIP website for the latest requirements. It mentioned an application for recommendation policy was coming soon in the info we saw.
Always check the source. Got it.
Definitely. Now, if the candidate also wants to apply for a work permit to start working sooner,
The bridging work permit.
exactly. The employer needs to provide a unique offer of employment number, which they get from the IRCC employer portal.
Okay, another step for the employer.
Yeah. And finally, as we touched on, employers are expected to actively support the newcomer settlement, connecting them with local services and resources. It's a pretty significant and ongoing commitment for employers participating.
Okay, so let's say an employer finds someone who looks like a great match, they're designated, they're ready to go. What does the actual application process look like from the perspective of the person wanting to immigrate?
Right. So for the candidate, the process involves several distinct steps. It really needs close coordination between them, the employer, Community Futures, and ultimately IRCC.
Walk us through those key steps. What's the very first thing a potential applicant needs to do?
The absolute first step is to secure that valid job offer. And it must be from an employer who is already officially designated by Community Futures under the RCIP.
Find a designated employer with a qualifying job.
Exactly. Candidates should be checking that official RCIP North Okanagan-Shuswap website, which usually lists designated employers. The job offer, like we've said, has to meet all the federal and community rules, and the candidate needs to make sure they meet the basic federal criteria for that job experience or the student exemption, education, language, etc.
Got it. Job offer in hand from a designated employer. What happens next?
Okay, once you have that offer, the next crucial step is for your designated employer to submit the formal application for a community recommendation to Community Futures on your behalf.
Right. The employer submits it, not the candidate.
Correct. Emphasizing that again. The application package put together by the employer needs all that proof. The job offer is genuine, fits priorities, meets wage rules, and that you, the candidate, meet all the criteria, including hitting that minimum 50 points.
And the specific documents needed. Check the website.
Always check the website. The info we had suggested details were still being finalized. So keep checking RCIP North Okanagan-Shuswap.com for the latest on the application for recommendation policy and required documents.
Okay. Community Futures gets the application.
Then what?
Then Community Futures assesses it. They look at community economic needs, your qualifications, your skills, and your genuine intention to actually live there long term.
How long does that take? Are they processed as they come in?
Actually, no. They process applications in batches based on specific intake windows scheduled throughout the year.
Intake windows, like specific dates.
Yeah. For 2025, they had windows scheduled for May, July, late August, early, September, October, and late November, December. After each window closes, they hold recommendation meetings to review the applications from that period.
So applications wait for the next meeting.
Essentially, yes. They review them together. If your assessment is positive, if you're deemed a good fit, Community Futures issues a formal community recommendation letter directly to you, the candidate.
Okay, the recommendation letter. That sounds like a big milestone. What's the candidate's next move? It is a big milestone. With that official letter in hand, you can now formally apply for permanent residence directly to IRCC, the federal department. You do this through their online permanent residence portal.
Online application to IRCC. What do you need for that?
Okay. You'll upload that community recommendation letter, of course, plus a whole lot of other supporting documents proving you meet all those federal requirements we discussed earlier.
Like what kind of documents?
Oh, proof of identity, civil status, copy of the job offer, detailed proof of your work experience, your education proof, including the ECA if needed, your language test results, proof of settlement funds if required.
Police certificates.
Yep, police certificates from any country you lived in for 6 months or more since age 18, plus all the required immigration forms and proof you paid the application fees.
Sounds like a lot of paperwork.
It usually is for PR applications, yeah. And remember, if you're already in Canada, you absolutely must keep your temporary status valid while this PR application is processing. Don't fall out of status.
Super important reminder. Is there anything the candidate can do while waiting for that PR decision, which can take a while?
Yes, and this is a really valuable part of the program. While your PR application is processing with IRCC, you might be eligible to apply for a 2-year employer-specific bridging work permit.
The bridging work permit, right. To work sooner.
Exactly. It lets you start working for that designated employer right away, or continue working if you're already here on a permit.
What do you need for that?
You need the eligible job offer, the community recommendation, and you have to meet the general requirements for a work permit. The employer also has to give you that offer of employment number from the IRCC portal.
Okay. Can spouses work too?
Often, yes. Spouses or common law partners might be eligible to apply for an open work permit, though it's usually restricted to working within that same North Okanagan-Shuswap community.
Good to know. And you apply online for the work permit, too.
Typically, yes. Getting that bridging work permit can be a huge advantage. Lets you get working, earn money, and really start integrating while you wait for the final PR decision.
We keep mentioning community futures. Let's just dig a bit deeper. What exactly is their role in managing this RCIP locally? What are all their responsibilities?
Right. Community Futures North Okanagan-Shuswap really is the central hub for managing the RCIP locally. They wear a lot of hats.
Like what?
Okay, first, they handle the overall program management. They tailor the pilot to the specific needs of the region. That includes setting the local priorities, identifying those key sectors, the specific NOCs in demand, and even setting those community wage requirements.
And they review those priorities.
Annually, yes. They can adjust things like the priority NOC list or wages based on how the local job market is changing. Keeps the program relevant.
Okay, what else?
Second, they handle employer designation. They're the ones who assess local businesses to see if they meet all the rules to participate. They check their operating history, sector, job quality, compliance record, all that stuff.
So they vet the employers.
Exactly. Third, they're at the absolute heart of the candidate assessment and recommendation process. They review all those applications submitted by employers.
Looking for.
They check if the candidate meets all the rules, federal and community. Is the job offer genuine and compliant? Do the candidate's skills match the region's needs? That's where the prior NOCs and the point system kick in. And does the candidate really intend to settle there long term? Plus, do they meet that minimum point score?
That 50 points.
Right. Based on all that, Community Futures decides whether to issue that crucial community recommendation letter. They're basically the gatekeepers for the PR application through this stream.
Gatekeepers, yeah. Makes sense. Anything else?
Finally, they also play a big role in fostering community connection and support for newcomers. They might not provide settlement services directly, but they work to create a welcoming environment and help with retention by connecting people with settlement agencies, community groups, and providing info about the RCIP itself.
So they manage the program, designate employers, assess candidates, issue recommendations, and help connect newcomers. Quite a job.
It really is. They're the local stewards of the RCIP, making sure it serves the region's economic interests and integration goals.
Okay, so the program is definitely up and running there now. What's the current status and any important updates people should know?
Yep, it's active and operational. Community Futures launched it in spring 2025. Employer designation opened May 1st, 2025. And the very first intake window for candidate recommendations was May 12th to 26th. 2025.
So those intake windows are key. People can't just apply anytime for the recommendation.
That's correct. It's not continuous intake. They use these defined intake windows throughout the year. We mentioned the 2025 schedule had periods in May, July, Augt, Octa, Novdec.
And applications from one window get reviewed together after it closes.
Exactly. After each window closes, there's a designated recommendation meeting week where they presumably review that batch and make decisions. So getting your community recommendation is tied to these cycles.
But the federal PR processing time is separate.
Totally separate. That depends on IRCC's own timelines and workload once you submit your application after getting the recommendation.
And this is still officially a pilot program. What does that mean for its future?
Right. Pilot usually means a defined time frame. The federal government often sets these for up to 5 years. The specific agreement here with Community Futures is for 3 years, starting February 2025.
3 years guaranteed? Maybe longer.
Could be. But the key thing is that Community Futures committed to reviewing their local priority sectors, NOCs, wages, maybe the point system annually.
So things could change year to year.
They could. It gives them flexibility to adapt to local needs, which means, and this is crucial, anyone interested, candidates or employers, really needs to keep checking that official RCIP North Okanagan-Shuswap website regularly for the latest info. Don't rely on old information.
Good advice. Check the source frequently.
Absolutely. But, the federal government has been making positive noises about the future of rural immigration programs. They often point to the success of RNIP, the previous pilot.
High retention rates, right?
Yeah. Preliminary data suggested retention was really good, like maybe 87% as of late 2022. So IRCC has said they want to work towards making this kind of community-driven rural model a more permanent part of Canada's immigration system.
That would offer more stability.
Exactly. More stability and predictability for the communities, the employers, and the people considering this pathway.
Okay, so switching gears a bit, what are the real advantages for someone thinking about the RCIP? And what's life generally like if they settle in the North Okanagan-Shuswap through this program?
Well, the RCIP offers some key advantages, especially if you're open to smaller community life. The biggest one, it's a dedicated, direct path to permanent residence specifically for settling in these designated rural communities.
A clear path if you want to live there.
Right, and the community-driven aspect is a big plus. It aims for a better, more sustainable match between newcomer skills and actual local job needs. Hopefully that leads to better job stability and integration like those RNIP retention rates suggest.
And for employers?
For employers facing labor shortages, it's a crucial tool. Helps with business continuity, growth, the whole local economy. And that bridging work permit is a huge advantage for candidates, lets them start working and settling much faster while waiting for PR.
So structure, community-focused work permit option sounds good. What about the local job market there? What kinds of jobs are we mainly talking about?
So as we said, it targets those 5 priority sectors: health, education, law, social services, sales and service, trades and transport, manufacturing and utilities. The fact RNIP was seen as a success locally really underlines the ongoing need here.
What are the projections like?
Looking at the broader Thompson-Okanagan region, projections show a lot of job openings over the next decade, maybe over 120,000 between 2024 and 2034.
Wow. In what areas?
Key industries driving demand are things like healthcare, social assistance, professional technical services, retail, construction, accommodation, food services, manufacturing, agriculture.
So the priority sectors seem well aligned.
They do. Specific jobs in demand that fit the RCIP priorities include managers, salespeople, nurses, LPNs, nurse aides, admin staff, truck drivers, social workers, bookkeepers, carpenters, electricians, lots of healthcare and trades. The 25 priority NOCs reflect these needs directly.
Okay. Any caveats about the job market?
Well, it's worth noting the regional unemployment rate has sometimes been a bit higher than the BC average. And there were recent reports of a slight dip in employment, maybe partly due to agriculture challenges. So while RCIP targets specific shortages, the overall economy can fluctuate.
Something to be aware of.
Yeah. Also, many future job openings across BC are expected to need post-secondary education or training. There's sometimes been talk of a skills gap. So attracting skilled immigrants through programs like RCIP is important for the region's future. Aligning your skills with those priority NOCs is definitely the strategic move.
Okay, beyond the job, what's the lifestyle like there? Community, recreation.
The lifestyle is a huge draw. The North Okanagan-Shuswap is widely known for amazing quality of life. People call it a Four Seasons playground for a reason.
Lakes and mountains.
Oh, yeah. You've got Shuswap Lake, Okanagan Lake, Kalamalka Lake, incredible for swimming, boating, paddling in summer, mountains all around for hiking, biking, then skiing and snowboarding in winter at places like Silver Star.
Trails, golf.
Tons of trails. The Shuswap Trail Alliance manages over 600 kilometers. Great golf courses, too, like Predator Ridge.
What about community life?
It's vibrant, lots of local events, festivals like the Salmon Arm Roots and Blues, the Falkland Stampede. Farmers markets are big. There's an art scene, live music, local sports. It feels community-oriented.
So a relaxed pace, but still stuff happening.
Exactly. More relaxed than a big city, but you still have good access to amenities, shopping, dining, healthcare, schools. Kelowna's airport isn't too far either.
And the towns themselves.
It's diverse. You've got larger centers like Vernon and Salmon Arm with more urban features than charming smaller towns like Armstrong, Enderby, Sicamous, plus rural and lakeside living, different housing options too. It really emphasizes that work-life balance.
Sounds really appealing. Okay, the practical side. Cost of living. What's the reality there?
Right, the practicalities. While it's generally more affordable than, say, Metro Vancouver, you need realistic expectations. It's not cheap.
Housing costs.
Housing is typically lower than Vancouver, yes, but prices have gone up quite a bit recently. Early 2025 saw benchmark prices rising across the Okanagan. Many single-family homes are well over $500,000.
Okay, so affordable is relative.
Very relative.
Yeah.
If you look at living wage estimates for nearby cities from late 2023, like Kelowna, around $24.60 summer. Kamloops, maybe $20.91 summer. These give you an idea of what's needed for a basic standard of living, factoring in housing and food costs.
And the RCIP minimum wages are $22, $25 an hour.
Exactly. They're close to or even below those living wage figures, especially for families. So if you're coming in on a job at the minimum RCIP wage, You might feel some financial pressure initially. Budgeting will be key.
The settlement funds help cushion that start.
They provide that initial buffer, yeah.
Yeah.
But realistically, job offers with wages significantly above the minimums will offer much more financial comfort. Even people with higher incomes feel the pinch in BC, sometimes due to the overall cost of living.
Good perspective.
Mm,
More affordable than Vancouver, but still substantial costs, especially housing.
that's a fair summary. Definitely do your homework on costs.
Okay, so if someone does make the move, what kind of support and resources are available to help them settle in?
Thankfully, there's a pretty solid network of settlement support organizations in the region.
Like who?
Well, in the Vernon area, you've got VDICSS, Vernon and District Immigrant and Community Services Society. They offer settlement help, English classes, job search support, community connections, the whole range.
And in the Shuswap.
There's SSS Shuswap, Settlement Services Society in Salmon Arm and the surrounding area, similar services. Support, translation, job help, outreach programs.
Any other?
Community futures themselves, while focused on economic development, can point you to resources. The Okanagan Regional Library branches have newcomer resources, computers, language tools. KCR in Kelowna might do outreach. And Work BC centers in Vernon and Salmon Arm offer employment services.
So help with finding housing, healthcare, schools, language training, job stuff.
Exactly. Orientation, finding housing, navigating healthcare and schools, language classes like LINC, resume help, interview skills, plus opportunities to connect socially. These services are generally available to various immigrant statuses, funded by federal and provincial governments.
Is it best to connect early?
Definitely. Engage with these services as early as you can. Many even offer pre-arrival services online to help you prepare before you even land.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to quickly recap our deep dive on the North Okanagan-Shuswap RCIP. It's really a community-focused immigration path designed specifically for the labor needs there. It has clear rules, both federal and local, for immigrants and the employers hiring them.
Yeah, that's a good summary. The local community plays a huge role in picking who they think will fill jobs and integrate well long term. Remember those 2 layers of eligibility for candidates and employers, and the structured process involving community futures and then IRCC.
So for anyone listening who's now thinking seriously about this, what are the absolute key takeaways they should keep front of mind?
Okay, number 1, do your homework. Thoroughly research the specific eligibility criteria and processes on the official RCIP North Okanagan-Shuswap website. Keep checking for updates on priority sectors, NOC codes, wages, and that point system.
Always check the official source.
Always. Number 2, remember it's employer-driven. Getting that genuine, qualifying job offer from a designated employer in a priority sector is step 1. It's foundational.
Find that job first.
Right. And number 3, lifestyle is great, yes, but be realistic about the cost of living. Assess it carefully alongside the benefits. Do your financial planning to make sure the transition is sustainable.
Excellent takeaways. Research, job offer, realistic cost assessment. Okay, here's a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. As we look at programs like this RCIP, how can communities and policymakers best strike that really delicate balance? The balance between, effectively addressing critical labor shortages in rural Canada and ensuring the long-term success, integration, and genuine economic well-being of the newcomers who choose these places. Think about that interplay between things like the minimum wage requirements set by these programs and the actual often rising cost of living in these regions. It's complex, right? It's a dynamic that's going to keep shaping individual lives, families, but also the future and vitality of these Canadian communities that welcome them.
Yeah, it's a really important question.
We definitely encourage you to explore those community resources we mentioned and really consider how programs like the RCIP can have such a profound impact on the people who immigrate and on the communities that open their doors.